Okay. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to do this again. It took me 10 years to get here, so I'm going to Instagram this later. Okay. Um, Thanks, you guys, for doing this and inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's going to be fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. Um, a few years ago, I started my PhD at Fielding University, which is I'm studying media psychology, and the school is known for its degrees in psychology. What it isn't known for is any particular stance on faith. So I fully expected to encounter some challenges to my faith. And I was actually kind of eager to take that on. I was anxious to kind of sink my teeth into some of the issues. But what I didn't expect is, as I studied psychology and learned how we're wired, I didn't expect to have my faith affirmed as often as it was. In fact, it was really quite revolutionary for me, scriptures that I had known all my life and seemed quite obvious to me. Suddenly, as I learned about our wiring, they took on a whole new dimension of meaning. So I'm going to talk to you about that today, about one of those issues in particular. And I could talk about it all day, but I have you for a half hour. So you're mine for a half hour. Okay, so let's see, are you seeing that? Okay, there you go. Ooh, we've got a lot going on here. As psychologists and as human beings, everything starts with perception, right? We have these 5 senses. We hear, smell, taste, touch, see. And that's how we navigate our environment. That's how we learn. That's how we take everything in. And as wonderful as those senses are, though, they're actually really quite limited. Albert Einstein says it's entirely possible that beyond the perception of our senses, worlds are hidden of which we are unaware. As dramatic as that sounds, it really doesn't take Einstein to make us aware of that. You know, the average dog has a wider field of vision than we do. Their eyes are on the side of the head. Now, they have a smaller binocular range of vision, but as we'll see in a minute, that's actually not doing that much for us. Sound, audio is another one. Animals beat us out again. We're better off than the elephants, so we've got that going for us. But when it comes to cats and dogs and dolphins and bats even, they beat us out every single time. Scientists have had a lot of fun determining what we call our thresholds of senses. One of my favorite examples of this is this researcher, Frederick Brochet. He invited about 60 wine experts to taste these 2 glasses of wine, one red and one white. And the experts are, swirling it the way they do, and they're sniffing it, and they're, ooh, the red one is jammy, and they're talking about the flavors of the crushed red fruits and how wonderful that is. And ironically, none of them noticed that they were actually drinking the same wine in both glasses. Both glasses had white wine in them. He had simply added a drop of red food coloring to one to give the illusion that they were drinking red. So, our taste buds turn out, even among the most discriminating members amongst us, to not be as discriminating as we thought they were. And it's interesting because, most of us are not too concerned about the fact that we really can't tell the difference between 2 grapes, because our experience of the world is very reliable. While I may not be able to discriminate very well, it's reliable, so I don't pick up the glass of wine, although I know none of you are actually tasting glasses of wine. So I don't pick up a glass of grape juice and it suddenly tastes like peanut butter, right? That would be odd. And that's not my experience. So because my experience is reliable, I tend to think that it's also valid. But let's look at the word valid. What does that mean? Validity technically means the extent to which a test measures what it claims to measure. Maybe a little bit easier way of thinking of that is, am I relying on the right instrument to gauge my reality? So, in the case of the wine experts, their taste buds weren't up to the task to test reality. They were not, their measure of reality was actually invalid. It might have been reliable, it tasted like wine or grape juice every single time, but it wasn't valid in terms of their ability to discriminate what actually was happening there with reality. But most of us are okay with that, right? Can't distinguish between fermented grapes, not gonna kill you. Most of us rely on our vision the most. That's considered to be the most trusted sense. It turns out that our eyes aren't a camera. As much as we feel like we're seeing something complete, we aren't. We're only taking in enough detail. Accuracy gets sacrificed in order for the scene to make sense. We only take in enough. We reserve our resources. We're very frugal with our resources so that we only take in enough to make sense. And in the case of Mrs. Yellowcap is my favorite, it doesn't make sense that the subject would be switching out because that's not our experience of the world. It's unreliable. So we don't even look at that, and we just look at the frame. Yikes. So art has taken advantage of this for a really long time. There are a number of examples, but I'm going to just go with the Impressionists. The Impressionists started painting around the late 1800s, and when their art first was displayed, no decent, respectable gallery would allow them to display their work. They had to display their work in something called the Salon of the Rejected. I think I've been in that salon before. So in the Salon of the Rejected, they display their art, the critics come and take a look at it, and they all have really negative things to say. This is really immature, this is lazy, this is unfinished. But see, what had happened is that about the same time that Impressionists were painting, photography had been invented. In fact, with the first daguerreotype, the first photograph got circulated, a French painter, I forget his name, he said, "The painting is dead, oui, oui." Okay, my French leaves a little to be desired, but the Impressionists said, no. Actually, let photography duplicate the subject, although the photographers will take issue with that, but let photography duplicate the subject the way artists have been, obliged to do in the past. We're now free to actually show you what the mind's eye really sees, which is something more like this. The mind's eye doesn't capture all the detail. The mind's eye just takes the bare minimum to make sense. And so what we're going to do is we're going to see how little we can give you so that your imagination fills in the gaps. And it created a whole new string of art. The Cubists, this is Paul Cézanne, Mount Saint Victoire. He did a whole series of paintings like this. The Cubist painters did the same thing. This is Marcel Duchamp's 1912 painting, The New Descending a Staircase, number 2. We have this quite wonderful sense of motion, right? It's just geometric shapes, and yet we have this sense of the new descending the staircase. While New Descending Staircase 1 and 2 are really well known, few people have seen New Descending the Staircase number 3. Which, if you see number 3, you now understand why it's not a good idea to walk around naked in the house. So there's this sense as the eye travels across the painting that someone has slipped on a banana peel, and yet there's no banana peel there. There's not even a person there. It's nothing but geometric shapes and color. Duchamp's 1912 painting was actually inspired by photography, by the work of a guy named Edward Muybridge. Edward Muybridge was a photographer who settled a gentleman's bet, as legend tells it, that these two wealthy guys decided, do all four horse hooves leave the planet at the same time when it's at a full gallop? I realize this is a pressing question in our times, but they hired Edward Muybridge, and he lined up a row of cameras and rigged it so that as the horse ran by, the lenses got triggered by a thread-like string that was attached. So it's and then he displayed these images all in a row. He got quite famous for this, and he displayed them at all the world fairs. And he inspired not only other painters, but he also inspired other photographers. You'll probably be more familiar with this string. This is done by a photographer named W.K.L. Dixon. And you're probably more familiar with his work if you saw it displayed a single frame at a time. So, what do you think about the large triangle? Someone just yell out. What is? Is it oppressive? A, a bully? He's a bully. He's a what? Oh, that's wonderful. Alcoholic father, yeah. Oh, that's sad. No. Anyway. um, yeah. This was actually an experiment done back in 1944. And every participant came up with an elaborate backstory for what was happening. Only one person said the large triangle is a geometric shape moving stroboscopically across a two-dimensional surface. Really, that's all the triangle is. It's just a geometric shape sliding around on a two-dimensional surface. Anything else is what you bring to it. It's us making sense of our world. My favorite example of this, that's about the shortest you can get, this was done back in 1972, way before, 40 years or so before emoticons came along. And this is a man blowing a bubble. And it's nothing but, punctuation and smaller lowercase letters. So it's great. So this wiring of ours, this tendency to make so much out of so little, is really pretty amazing when you think about it. Because it is what allows us to do something like get into a cylinder on one coast, and 5 hours later, I'm at another coast. And I really have no understanding of aeronautics. It allows me to go into a store, and the store gives me lots and lots of stuff. And all I give them is a number and an illegible signature. And yet, they let me walk out with all the stuff. My favorite example is it allows me to go to a faucet and flip a nozzle and fill a glass of water. I really have very rudimentary understanding of plumbing. In all three cases, I understand only a very small slice of the story, and yet I'm able to be amazingly productive because I know all I need to know. Occasionally, though, this trips us up. I was in a Target a few years ago. A woman came in. I wish that it was a different gender, but she came in and she walks up to the cashier and she says, "So I need help getting into my car. It's locked." And I quite sympathetically said to her, "So did you lock your keys in your car?" And she said, "No, my clicker's not working." And I said, "But you have your keys." "I know, but my clicker's not working." "But you have your keys." Right? For her, the story, her clicker had been so reliable that she forgot that it was an actually electronic device to do something you can actually physically manage on your own. So this really becomes problematic when this phenomenon occurs with people. I'm going to play yet one more clip. I'm a film person, so I'm sorry. If you thought I wasn't going to do clips, you're crazy. Chimamanda Adichie is a novelist, and she spoke at a TED Talk a few years ago. And she talked about the fact that she grew up in Nigeria in a middle-class family. Her parents were both professors. She comes here to America, meets her American roommate, who is quite surprised to find out that Chimamanda's idea of tribal music is a Mariah Carey CD. And she consistently runs into people who have a much stronger idea of what it means for her to be African than she does, having grown up in Nigeria. The problem with stereotypes is not that they're untrue, it's that they're incomplete. I think her verb flatten is particularly apt because it reminds us of that two-dimensional world that we can live in, not bothering to go back and examine something that we took for granted. We have enormous guilt over stereotypes, but when I studied how we're made, God designed us that way. He designed us to navigate the world with only partial information. And when I realized that, and one scripture in particular took on a whole new significance for me. And that was the scripture, Genesis 2:18. It's not good that man should be alone. Let's go back to the ABC, would you fall for that experiment? In that experiment, Mrs. Yellowcap is asked to take a picture, unbeknownst to Mrs. Yellowcap. As the sign goes by, Nick and Scott, B and C, are trading spaces. There's a perspective that would be particularly helpful to Mrs. Yellowcap right now. One of those perspectives would be the divine perspective, which is one reason why this scripture, lean not on your own understanding, also took on a whole new meaning for me, because my experience of reality can be so fragmented. But there are some other perspectives to remember as well, because when God said it's not good for man to be alone, we had perfect access to divine perspective at that point in time. It was before the fall. So the other perspectives to consider is the friend, the person that comes alongside, who may not be as involved in the story, and they're able to see what's happening. But a lot of times our friends' perspectives are so similar that they miss the same things that we miss. The perspective that would actually be most valuable to Mrs. Yellowcap is the one opposing her. And I think this is particularly important because I think, especially as Christians, we tend to think of the opposing view as something that needs to be shouted down, as something that needs to be debated, as something that at best needs to be tolerated, maybe placated, but we seldom think of it as something that can actually inform us or help us, or dare I say, even help us to thrive. When God said it's not good for man to be alone, he had just finished creation. 7 days, everything was good. It was all good. We had mud to feel between our toes. We had fruit to sink our teeth into. We had crickets to hear. We had, I'm trying to think of other things, crickets to hear and sunsets to see. We had enough to fill all 5 senses, but God said it's not good for man to be alone, because if we're alone, we're going to miss most of it. Most of it's just going to go right past us. So what did God give man? A woman. A woman to guarantee he would have a different perspective. Right? Both of them inform each other. It's so important to have that opposite, that different perspective. It's sometimes opposite, sometimes not. And it also guaranteed community. It's not good for man to be by himself. He needs someone beside him. He needs someone above him, below him, opposite him. He needs all of it. It's just not good for man to be alone.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.